Everyone, I'm Jim Longworth, and welcome to Triad Today's 10th anniversary special. Over the next half hour, we'll look back at some of the guests we've had on the program since it premiered in October 2003. Among them, Hollywood celebrities, politicians, industry leaders, and more. Also joining me for this special program are three of our infamous roundtable panelists. Ogie Overman, of course, a famous journalist, Keith Granberry, CEO, President of the Winston-Salem Urban League, and Sheriff B.J. Barnes of Guilford County. And you'll hear from them throughout the program. First up, a look back at some of the politicians and elected officials who have appeared on Triad Today. Back in 2005, Triad Today was honored to receive the prestigious Spectrum of Democracy Award for our commitment to voter education. And that was followed by recognition from Congress for our dedication to community service.
Mr. Speaker, the press has a responsibility to fulfill its role as the fourth estate. That is to serve as a guardian of democracy and defender of the public interest. I'm pleased to congratulate Triad today for its outstanding commitment to keeping the community informed.
We've always felt it was important to hear from our elected officials, so during our first 10 years, we featured dozens of mayors, 2 governors, 4 congressmen, and 3 United States senators. Here are just a few highlights.
Vernon said in one of his press releases about you that you had raised taxes 100 times. Comment.
Not true. Vernon misunderstands a lot of things about what goes on in the legislature. Unfortunately, a lot of local bills have to come to the legislature for approval. One of those sets of bills has to do with occupancy taxes. We've voted on a lot of authorizations for local governments to raise taxes. We didn't do that in the General Assembly.
Why are you talking slow like I don't understand? I mean, I am stupid.
This small business bill, give me a quick schooling on that.
We create a loan fund that will go to the smallest banks that deal with the small businesses generally.
That's good.
And we keep track of them loaning to small businesses.
Accountability.
Accountability. And we provide some incentives to the employers.
You helped put in the first seatbelt law across the boards, across the states. And would you tell me how many lives have been saved because of that?
You know, I call it the trifecta. President Reagan agreed to support age 21 drinking rule because kids were being killed on these blood borders going to states with lower drinking age. The same week that he signed that law into effect, my Rule 208 came into effect, which was designed to pass state safety belt laws,
right.
And there were none then,
right.
And also to get airbags, passive restraints into cars. And the experts tell us those 3 things, that trifecta, have saved 228,000 lives.
Monies could have been better spent too, and I know you'd like to see it spent on human things, human resource things.
The U.S. should not be the sole entity paying for this war.
Exactly.
When we're doing $10 billion a month, the whole budget of the state of North Carolina is a little over $20 billion for a year. We're spending that in 2 months in Iraq.
Yeah.
And I think of the schools and the hospitals and the roads and the transportation infrastructure that could be being built in the U.S. right now that is not.
In the primary, there was no mudslinging between the two of you. So far in the runoff, no mudslinging. Serious question, was this by design? Was this something that you agreed upon together or separately because either A, you're gentlemen, or B, you don't want to weaken your position in the fall against a Democratic candidate?
I consider Tony a friend. We live about 2 miles down the road from each other in Raleigh, and we're not running against each other. We're running for the same office, running for Lieutenant Governor.
Thoughts, Tony?
Well, we got in early. We were the first 2 candidates to declare that we were running, so we've actually spent time together over the past year, and we seem to agree on a lot of issues. I have no intention whatsoever of trying to bring up any negative issue, and I appreciate the tone of the campaign.
Do you agree with Judge Orr's position, who happens to be a Republican, that we need to get rid of these industry incentives?
When 49 other states are in the incentives game, then North Carolina must be. I don't agree with it as governor. I'm going to work with the governor.
But if there was a law to make it illegal, I mean, we should all pull out of it. Yeah.
But as governor, that's one of the things I'm going to do. I'm going to lead the 49 other governors to get rid of them in general.
I'm with you.
But they've got to be held accountable.
As governor, would you at least try to put the brakes on these incentives to the point to say, look, if you actually create new jobs, we will take a look at incentives?
Well, first of all, I'm against cash upfront incentives, which Governor Perdue started 3 years ago, which is disastrous. What I think we have to do is give incentives to every business, including the existing businesses that have invested in North Carolina.
All right, guys, we've just seen interview clips with some of the politicians and candidates who have appeared on Triad today over the last 10 years. We don't have to comment specifically on anything they said, but my general question to you three, how do you think politics has changed over the past 10 years? Ogie, you started out.
National politics has gotten a lot dirtier, a lot more partisan, a lot nastier. It seems almost we're losing our ability to govern each other, Jim, and it's kind of frightening to me. I mean, here we are in the middle of a government shutdown, for crying out loud. That should not be allowed to happen. We've got to somehow figure out the art of government. Governance means the art of compromise. And right now, everybody is locked into their positions. They're intransigent, and nobody is making any compromise whatsoever.
Keith, what do you think?
Well, I think that politics has gotten more personal. I think you have the far left and the far right, and there's no moderates that are in there to really help govern. And when you look at that, that means that the government is not being effective if you don't have people who can create a compromising situation where you're not going to get everything that you want, but you can't have a small group of people holding an entire nation hostage based on their views, and specifically about them getting reelected. I think more people focus now on their own reelection bid than the governance of the country.
Well, BJ, I'd be interested to see what you say, because when we started out Triad today in October 2003, of course, George Bush was in the White House, and we had a Democratic governor and some good Democratic legislators in Raleigh. Are things really that different? Do you disagree with what Keith and Ogie said?
No, actually, I agree with both of them. I mean, it has gotten more partisan, it has gotten more personal, and I think that's wrong. Basically, a lot of politicians elected today are just like Keith said, they're looking for the next election. And what they ought to be looking at is serving. Now, you get a lot of people that say, well, you have to go along to get along. Well, you don't really, but you have to be civil about what you're doing. And the problem is a lot of them aren't being civil with how they're handling themselves and handling their office.
Good point. Thanks, guys, for talking about that subject. We could go on and on forever, but we have so many things we want to try to get to, and we'll hear from these guys a little later on. When we come back after this quick break, we'll talk about Piedmont personalities. We'll be right back.